Imagine two people suffering exactly the same injury, the same amount of tissue damage, the same nerves firing, the same signals traveling toward the brain. Yet one person experiences the pain as almost unbearable, while the other feels something noticeably less intense. What changed? Not the wound, not the body, not even the pain signals themselves. The difference may be something far less obvious. Who was nearby? A hand on a shoulder, a familiar face, the presence of someone trusted, or the complete absence of anyone at all. Pain feels like one of the most private experiences a human can have. No one can directly enter another person's nervous system. No one can feel exactly what someone else feels. And yet modern neuroscience has uncovered something remarkable. Pain is not merely a signal from damaged tissue, it is also a social experience. Somewhere deep inside the brain, systems that evolved to help us survive in groups are constantly influencing how strongly pain is felt. Networks involved in attachment, belonging, trust, and loneliness interact with networks that process physical suffering. In ways scientists are still discovering, being alone can make pain hurt more, and being connected can sometimes make it hurt less. But why? How can another person's presence alter sensations generated inside your own nervous system? To answer that question, we need to begin far earlier than pain itself. We need to travel back through millions of years of evolution to a world where survival depended on staying close to others. Picture an early human standing on an open grassland. The landscape stretches endlessly toward the horizon. Predators move silently through the distance. Food is uncertain. Danger appears without warning. For a solitary individual, survival odds are poor. But for a group, everything changes. Many eyes spot threats. Many hands gather resources. Protection becomes shared. Over thousands of generations, human brains evolved within these social environments. We became one of the most cooperative species on Earth. And because social bonds became essential for survival, evolution faced an unusual challenge. How could the brain motivate individuals to remain connected to their group? One solution was surprisingly elegant: make social separation feel bad. Very bad. The same nervous system that warns us about physical injury appears to participate in warning us about social isolation. In other words, loneliness may not simply be an emotion, it may function as a biological alarm, a signal telling us something important for survival is missing. Today, loneliness might emerge after moving to a new city, losing relationships, or spending long periods without meaningful connection. But deep inside the brain, the alarm systems responding to isolation were built for a much older world. A world where separation from the group could mean death. This idea might sound metaphorical, yet neuroscience increasingly suggests it is quite literal. Brain imaging studies have revealed something unexpected. When people experience social rejection, exclusion, or loneliness, some of the same brain regions activated during physical pain become active as well. It is as if the brain partially interprets social disconnection using neural machinery originally designed for bodily harm. The overlap is not perfect. Emotional pain and physical pain are not identical experiences, but they are connected far more deeply than scientists once believed. To understand why, we first need to understand what pain actually is. Most people imagine pain as a direct readout of injury. Step on a nail, damage occurs, pain follows. Simple. Except that reality is much stranger. Pain does not exist in the foot, or the hand, or the injured tissue. Pain exists in the brain. The body sends information, the brain creates the experience. Imagine touching a hot stove. Specialized sensory neurons called nociceptors detect potentially damaging heat. Electrical signals race through peripheral nerves. They enter the spinal cord. They travel upward toward the brain. But these incoming signals are not pain itself. They are more like messages, warnings, data streams. Only after the brain receives, interprets, and evaluates that information does the conscious experience of pain emerge. This distinction is crucial. because it means pain is not simply measured, it is constructed. And anything that influences the brain's interpretation process can potentially alter the final experience. Attention can alter pain. Expectations can alter pain. Fear can alter pain. Memory can alter pain. And as researchers are increasingly discovering, social context can alter pain too. In fact, pain processing involves a vast network distributed across multiple regions of the brain. Some areas analyze where the injury occurred. Others evaluate how dangerous it is. Still others generate emotional responses. Together, these systems create the final perception we call pain. Think of it like an orchestra. No single instrument produces the entire symphony. Instead, many sections contribute simultaneously. Change one section and the music changes. Change several sections and the entire experience transforms. Now imagine that hidden among these neural musicians are circuits devoted to social connection. Circuits constantly asking questions. Am I safe? Am I supported? Am I alone? Can others help me? The answers to those questions may influence how loudly the pain orchestra plays. Researchers first began noticing clues decades ago. Hospital patients often reported less distress when family members were nearby. Children tolerated painful medical procedures better when parents remained present. Athletes sometimes continued competing despite injuries while surrounded by teammates and cheering crowds. Meanwhile, isolation frequently appeared to worsen suffering. At first, these observations seemed psychological. Perhaps people were merely distracted. Perhaps companionship improved mood. But as neuroscience advanced, evidence suggested something deeper. The brain was not simply reacting emotionally to social situations. It was actively integrating social information into pain processing itself. Hidden beneath conscious awareness, social signals were influencing neural activity. The presence of another person could change what pain felt like, and loneliness could amplify it. Scientists would eventually discover that this effect extends far beyond emotions. It reaches into stress hormones, immune responses, neurotransmitters, and even the microscopic communication between brain cells. But before those discoveries emerged, researchers faced a fundamental mystery. How does the brain know whether we are alone? How can social experiences influence physical sensations generated by nerve fibers and spinal pathways? Somewhere inside the nervous system, information about relationships, trust, attachment, and belonging must somehow intersect with information about injury. Two seemingly different worlds, one social, one physical. Yet evidence kept suggesting they were connected. The clues were accumulating. Brain scans, behavioral studies, animal experiments, medical observations, each pointing toward the same surprising possibility. Pain may never have been solely about damaged tissue. It may also be about social survival. And if that is true, then loneliness is not merely an emotional state. It becomes something far more biological, a condition capable of reshaping how the brain interprets reality itself. The question is where this hidden connection exists. What neural machinery links social isolation to physical suffering? And why would evolution build a nervous system in which a lack of human connection can literally make pain feel stronger? The answers lie deep within the brain's most ancient circuits, where the boundaries between social experience and physical survival begin to disappear. Deep inside the brain, there is no single location labeled loneliness, no dedicated switch that turns social connection on or off. Instead, countless networks communicate continuously, exchanging information about the body's condition, the outside world, and the people around us. Some of these networks evolved long before humans existed. Others emerged as social life became increasingly important. And somewhere within this tangled web, scientists discovered one of the most fascinating clues in the mystery of pain. A region known as the anterior cingulate cortex. Hidden near the center of the brain, this structure acts like a sophisticated monitoring system. It tracks conflict, detects problems, evaluates threats, and plays a major role in the emotional dimension of pain. When you accidentally cut your finger, the brain processes several different aspects of the event. One network identifies the location, another estimates the intensity, but the anterior cingulate cortex helps generate something different: the unpleasantness, the suffering, the feeling that something is wrong. In many ways, it contributes to the emotional weight attached to pain. Then researchers noticed something unexpected. The same region became active during experiences of social rejection. Not physical injury, not tissue damage, simple exclusion. In one famous experiment, volunteers participated in a computerized social game. They believed they were playing with real people online. At first, everyone shared the ball equally. Then gradually the other players stopped including them. The participants watched as the ball passed back and forth between others while they were ignored. Nothing physical happened. No injury occurred. Yet brain scans revealed activation in regions associated with distress, including areas involved in processing pain. The brain appeared to react to social exclusion as if it mattered profoundly, because from an evolutionary perspective, it does. For much of human history, being excluded from the group could reduce protection, access to resources, and chances of survival. The nervous system may therefore treat social threats with unusual seriousness. But this was only the beginning. As imaging technology improved, researchers started uncovering a broader picture. Social experiences were influencing pain-related systems throughout the brain. And the influence worked both ways. Physical pain could increase feelings of social vulnerability. Social isolation could increase sensitivity to physical pain. The two systems appeared intertwined, almost like overlapping layers of the same biological alarm network. Then came another clue. Researchers began studying animals. Unlike human volunteers, animals allow scientists to investigate mechanisms directly, measuring changes inside tissues, hormones, and neural circuits. What they found was remarkable. Animals isolated from their social groups often showed increased pain sensitivity. Mild stimuli produced stronger reactions. Recovery from injury sometimes changed. Stress responses intensified. The effects appeared throughout the body. This pointed researchers toward another major player in the story: stress. At first glance, stress and pain seem like separate experiences, but biologically they are deeply connected. Whenever the brain detects danger, it activates a coordinated survival response. The hypothalamus sends signals, hormones are released, the adrenal glands produce cortisol and other stress chemicals. Heart rate changes, attention narrows, energy shifts toward immediate survival. This system works extremely well during short-term threats, but prolonged activation can create problems, and loneliness often acts as a chronic stressor. When people experience persistent social isolation, the brain may interpret the situation as ongoing uncertainty. The nervous system remains more vigilant, more alert, more prepared for danger. Over time, this heightened vigilance can alter how pain signals are processed. Imagine turning up the volume on a microphone. The original sound remains the same, but the output becomes louder. Similarly, chronic stress can increase the sensitivity of pain processing systems. Signals that might once have seemed manageable begin feeling more intense. The nervous system becomes easier to activate. Researchers sometimes describe this process as sensitization. The brain and spinal cord gradually become more responsive to incoming signals, like a smoke detector becoming so sensitive that it starts reacting to steam instead of fire. This heightened sensitivity can affect both acute and chronic pain, and loneliness appears capable of contributing to the process. But stress hormones are only part of the story. Another surprising actor was waiting to be discovered: the immune system. For decades, scientists viewed the immune system primarily as a defense force against infection, a network of cells hunting viruses, bacteria, and damaged tissue. But modern research has revealed something far more complex. The immune system constantly communicates with the brain. Chemical messengers travel between them. Signals flow in both directions. Together, they help regulate behavior, mood, energy levels, and pain perception. When people experience chronic loneliness, researchers often observe changes in inflammatory activity. Certain immune signals become elevated. The body shifts into a state of increased vigilance. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes a strange kind of sense. An isolated individual may face greater danger from injury. Preparing for possible wounds could have offered survival advantages. But inflammation comes with consequences. Inflammatory molecules can influence pain pathways. They can increase the sensitivity of nerves. They can alter communication between neurons. They can amplify the brain's perception of threat. The result is a body that becomes more responsive to pain. What begins as a social experience gradually spreads into biology, into chemistry, into neural signaling itself. Then researchers uncovered yet another layer, one involving one of the brain's most powerful social chemicals, oxytocin. Often nicknamed the bonding hormone, oxytocin plays a role in attachment, trust, caregiving, and social interaction. It is released during many forms of positive social contact: parent-child bonding, affection, physical touch, supportive relationships. But oxytocin does more than influence emotions. It also interacts with pain systems. Studies have shown that under certain conditions, oxytocin can reduce pain sensitivity. The mechanisms are complex and still being investigated, but the overall pattern is striking. Social connection appears capable of activating biological pathways that dampen suffering. The brain is not simply receiving support, it is being chemically altered by it. And nowhere is this effect more visible than in one of the most fascinating experiments ever conducted on human pain. Researchers invited volunteers into brain imaging laboratories. Participants received mild, painful stimulation while their neural activity was monitored. Sometimes they experienced the pain alone, other times something changed. A trusted romantic partner was present. In some versions of these studies, participants simply held their partner's hand. Nothing else. No medication, no treatment, no change to the painful stimulus itself. Yet the results were astonishing. Many participants reported less pain. Brain activity shifted. Regions involved in threat and distress showed altered responses. The nervous system appeared to treat the same painful event differently when a trusted person was nearby. Not because the injury disappeared, not because the nerves stopped firing, but because the brain's interpretation changed. The meaning of the experience changed. The individual was no longer facing the threat alone. This finding hinted at something profound. Pain is not merely information about damage, it is information about damage in context. And social context may be one of the most powerful influences of all. A painful event experienced in isolation can carry one meaning. The same event experienced in the presence of trusted support can carry another. The brain continuously evaluates both. Without our awareness, it asks questions inherited from millions of years of evolution. Am I protected? Am I vulnerable? Can someone help? Must I handle this threat alone? The answers shape the final experience. But perhaps the most surprising discovery was still ahead. Because researchers would eventually find evidence suggesting that loneliness does not simply affect pain after an injury occurs, it may alter the nervous system before pain even arrives. Changing how the brain predicts danger, changing how it prepares for suffering, and potentially changing how humans experience the world long before they realize anything has changed at all. Long before a painful event reaches conscious awareness, the brain is already making predictions. This may be one of the most important discoveries in modern neuroscience. The brain is not a passive receiver waiting for information to arrive. It is an active forecasting machine. Every second, billions of neurons generate expectations about what will happen next, what you will see, what you will hear, what you will feel, and crucially, what might threaten your survival. Pain emerges from this predictive process. Incoming signals from the body are constantly compared against expectations generated by the brain. When the brain predicts danger, pain can become amplified. When danger seems manageable, pain may be reduced. The experience is never produced by injury alone. It is produced by the interaction between physical signals and the brain's interpretation of those signals. And loneliness appears capable of altering those interpretations in powerful ways. Imagine two identical alarms connected to two different security systems. One system operates normally. The other has been placed on high alert for months. Every movement is treated as suspicious. Every sound is investigated. The alarms themselves are identical, but the sensitivity is very different. Researchers increasingly believe something similar can happen inside the nervous system. Persistent social isolation may encourage the brain to adopt a more defensive posture, a more vigilant state, a world that feels less predictable, less supported, more threatening. Over time, this changes how incoming information is evaluated. Potential threats become easier to detect. Pain signals may receive greater attention. The nervous system becomes primed for danger. What makes this especially fascinating is that the process often unfolds below conscious awareness. People may not realize their social experiences are influencing physical sensations. The connection feels invisible. A sore back feels physical. A headache feels physical. An injury feels physical. Yet beneath the surface, social experiences may be quietly shaping how those sensations are processed. The relationship becomes even more apparent when researchers examine chronic pain. Unlike acute pain, which serves as a warning signal after injury, chronic pain often persists long after tissues have healed. Millions of people worldwide live with ongoing pain that cannot be fully explained by visible damage. For decades, scientists struggled to understand why. Why would the brain continue generating pain when the original injury has faded? Today, many researchers believe the answer involves changes within the nervous system itself. Pain pathways can become sensitized. Neural networks can become reinforced. The brain can learn pain. Not intentionally, not consciously, but biologically. Repeated activation strengthens certain pathways. Just as practice strengthens a skill, repeated pain processing can strengthen pain-related circuits. And social factors appear to influence this process. Studies repeatedly find associations between chronic loneliness and increased pain severity. People experiencing greater social isolation often report higher levels of suffering. Researchers continue debating the precise mechanisms involved. No single explanation accounts for every case, but the overall pattern remains striking. The social environment appears to shape physical experience in ways once considered impossible. This brings us to one of the deepest questions in the science of pain. Why would evolution design such a system? Why connect physical suffering to social connection at all? The answer may lie in a simple reality of human survival. For most of our species' history, survival was rarely an individual achievement. Humans survived through cooperation. Protection came from groups. Children survived because caregivers remained nearby. Injured individuals often depended on others for assistance. A nervous system capable of tracking social support would possess a major advantage. If support was available, certain threats became less dangerous. If support disappeared, vulnerability increased. Pain could therefore function not only as a signal of injury, but also as a signal of context. The brain needed to know more than whether damage existed. It needed to know whether the individual faced that damage alone. Seen through this lens, loneliness and pain begin to look less like separate experiences and more like related warning systems. Different alarms, shared purpose, protect survival, move the individual toward safety. The overlap becomes especially visible during some of life's most difficult moments. Consider hospitalization. Patients surrounded by supportive family members often report experiences that differ dramatically from those facing illness in isolation. The disease may be identical, the treatment may be identical, yet the subjective experience can be profoundly different. Or consider childhood. A frightened child falls and scrapes a knee. Before examining the wound, many children immediately search for a parent. a familiar face, a trusted voice, a source of safety. Only after locating that support does the brain fully decide how serious the situation feels. Anyone who has watched this unfold has seen something remarkable. The injury itself is not the whole story. The social environment becomes part of the pain response. Even adulthood does not erase these ancient patterns. Deep within the nervous system, mechanisms shaped over millions of years continue operating, monitoring, evaluating, adjusting. The brain constantly asks whether support exists, whether protection is nearby, whether danger must be faced alone. Recent research has expanded this understanding even further. Scientists now investigate how social connection influences recovery after surgery, responses to illness, immune activity, and long-term health outcomes. Again and again, the findings point toward a surprising conclusion. Human biology appears fundamentally social. Our brains were not built for isolation. They were built within networks of relationships, within families, groups, communities, connections. The consequences extend far beyond emotions. They reach into physiology itself, into hormones, into inflammation, into neural circuitry, into the subjective experience of pain. Yet perhaps the most profound realization emerges when we step back and view the entire picture. Pain often feels like the most personal experience imaginable, private, internal, locked inside a single nervous system. But the science tells a different story. Even pain carries traces of other people. The architecture of suffering contains evidence of our social nature. Every time the brain evaluates an injury, it does so through systems shaped by countless generations of cooperative survival. The sensation may feel individual, its origins are not. In a sense, every painful experience contains a hidden evolutionary memory, a reminder that humans evolved not as solitary creatures, but as members of groups, as organisms whose survival depended on connection, whose nervous systems learned to treat social bonds as biological necessities, and whose brains still carry those ancient instructions today. So the next time two people experience the same injury, yet describe very different levels of pain, the explanation may extend far beyond nerves and tissue. It may involve invisible calculations unfolding deep within the brain, calculations about safety, vulnerability, support, belonging. Questions the nervous system has been asking for hundreds of thousands of years. Questions so deeply embedded that we rarely notice them. Who is nearby? Who can help? Am I facing this alone? Because pain is not merely a measure of damage, it is a measure of damage interpreted through the lens of survival. And for a profoundly social species like ours, survival has never been only about the body. It has always been about the connections that surround it. Perhaps that is the strangest discovery of all. The sensation we often consider most physical may also be one of the most social. A reminder that beneath modern cities, technology, and culture, the human brain still remembers the ancient world that shaped it. A world where isolation carried danger, connection offered protection. And the difference between suffering alone and suffering together could mean the difference between survival and extinction. Even today, that ancient biology continues speaking through the language of pain, quietly, constantly, hidden beneath every signal traveling through the nervous system, waiting to remind us that the story of pain is not only a story about injury, it is also a story about being human.